Chapter 7, The Last Scientists. Dr. Kenji Nakamura floated in the zero-gravity laboratory aboard research station Prometheus, surrounded by the most sophisticated scientific equipment humanity had ever created. Around him, holographic displays showed the results of 3 centuries of research into faster-than-light travel, artificial intelligence, and quantum mechanics. Soon, all of this knowledge would have to be compressed into the data banks of the Orc ships, while the station itself would be converted into humanity's mobile research platform. The quantum drive modifications are complete, reported Dr. Elena Vasquez, his chief engineer, as she emerged from the station's engine compartment. Her environmental suit was stained with coolant and marked by the burns that came from working with exotic matter. We've increased the efficiency by 30%, but the power requirements are still enormous. Nakamura nodded, reviewing the data on his personal display. The faster-than-light drives that would carry the Orc ships to their new home were based on quantum manipulation of spacetime itself. The technology was barely a century old, and they were pushing it far beyond its tested limits. "What about the navigational systems?" he asked. "400 light-years is well beyond our mapping range. Dr. Okafor's team has been working on that. They've developed a new form of quantum entanglement navigation that should allow us to maintain course even in unmapped space." "But..." She paused, her expression troubled. "We're essentially flying blind. We know our destination system has a potentially habitable planet, but we won't know if it's actually suitable for human life until we arrive." It was a sobering thought. Humanity was betting its entire future on telescopic observations of a planet they had never visited, guided by technology that had never been tested over such vast distances. If they were wrong about either the planet or the navigation, the Orc ships would carry millions of people to their deaths in the void between stars. "Dr. Nakamura," came a voice from the communications station, "incoming priority transmission from Dr. Chen at Helios Station." The hologram of Dr. Sarah Chen materialized in the center of the laboratory, her face showing the exhaustion of someone who had been working without rest for weeks. Behind her, the twisted wreckage of solar collection equipment drifted past the station's viewports. "Kenji, we have a problem with the FTL drive activation," Chen said without preamble. "The solar instability is creating quantum interference patterns that could disrupt the faster-than-light systems. If we try to activate the drives while still in the solar system, we could tear the ships apart." Nakamura felt his blood run cold. The FTL drives were humanity's only hope of escaping the solar explosion. If they couldn't activate them until they were clear of the interference, they would need to travel much farther on conventional drives before making the jump to FTL. "How far?" he asked, though he dreaded the answer. "At least 10 light-years from the sun. Maybe more, depending on how violent the explosion is." 10 light-years. Even with their most powerful conventional drives, it would take decades to reach that distance. They didn't have decades, they had weeks. "There might be another option," Dr. Vasquez said slowly. "What if we don't try to escape the interference? What if we use it?" Both scientists turned to stare at her. "Explain," Chen said from the hologram. "The quantum interference from the solar explosion, it's not random. It follows patterns based on the fundamental structure of spacetime. If we could synchronize our FTL drives with those patterns instead of fighting against them, we could use the explosion itself as a quantum slingshot," Nakamura finished, his mind racing through the implications. "The energy release would amplify our FTL effect, potentially increasing our speed by orders of magnitude." "It's never been tried," Chen warned. "The calculations alone would be enormously complex, and if we get the timing wrong, we die," Vasquez said simply. "But we die anyway if we can't escape the sterilization radius. At least this way, we have a chance." Nakamura activated his personal communicator, sending out a call to every quantum physicist and FTL engineer in the solar system. "Dr. Chen, I need you to provide us with the most detailed predictions of the solar explosion you can manage. We're going to attempt something that's either brilliant or suicidal." Knowing this group, Chen replied with a tired smile, "Probably both." Over the next 18 hours, Nakamura's laboratory became the center of the most intensive research project in human history. Scientists joined the effort from across the solar system, their minds linked through quantum communication networks that allowed them to collaborate in real time despite being separated by millions of kilometers. The mathematics were staggering. They needed to predict not just when the sun would explode, but the exact quantum signature of that explosion. Then they had to modify the FTL drives of 7 massive Arc ships to synchronize with patterns that would exist for only microseconds during the stellar detonation. The power curves are off by 0.03%, reported Dr. Martinez from Arc 3. If we can't get them synchronized within 0.01%, the quantum fields will tear us apart. Working on it, replied Dr. Singh from Europa Station. I'm running the calculations through the quantum computers now. As the hours passed, the solution slowly took shape. It would require perfect timing, precise positioning, and a level of coordination between the Arc ships that had never been attempted. But the mathematics suggested it was possible, barely. Dr. Nakamura, came a voice from the bridge. Admiral Hayes is requesting an update on the FTL modifications. The evacuation timeline is accelerating. Nakamura looked around the laboratory at his exhausted colleagues, then at the holographic display showing their desperate calculations. Tell the Admiral we'll have an answer in 6 hours. And tell him. He paused, thinking of the millions of people whose lives depended on their work. Tell him we're going to try something that's never been done before. Sir, the bridge officer asked. We're going to surf a supernova. Chapter 8, The Weight of Choice. Captain Diana Foster stood in the cargo bay of Transport Ship Unity, facing 5,000 people who had just learned they would not be evacuated to the Arc ships. The faces before her showed every human emotion: rage, despair, resignation, desperate hope. As the military officer responsible for this transport group, it was her job to deliver the news that would seal their fate. Ladies and gentlemen, she began, her voice carrying across the silent bay, I know you've heard rumors about the selection process. I'm here to give you the truth. A woman near the front, middle-aged, wearing the simple clothes of a Earth factory worker, raised her hand. Captain, my daughter was selected for Arc 7, but I wasn't. Will I ever see her again? Foster's heart broke a little more. This question, or variations of it, had been asked 1,000 times across the evacuation fleet. The Arc ships will establish communication networks once they reach the destination system. If our mission succeeds. She couldn't finish the sentence. If their mission succeeded, it would be centuries before any meaningful communication was possible. What about us? Demanded a man from the middle of the crowd. Are we just supposed to die here? No, Foster said firmly. You've been assigned to the extended range colony ships. These vessels don't have the capacity of the Arc ships, but they've been modified with the latest life support systems and FTL drives. Your journey will be different, but you will survive. It was a partial truth. The extended range ships could sustain their populations for decades, maybe even a century with careful resource management. But they lacked the industrial capacity and genetic diversity of the Arc ships. Their passengers would face a harder journey with an uncertain outcome. Different how? Asked another voice. Foster activated a holographic display showing the colony ship configurations. The extended range ships will travel to nearer star systems, destinations that can be reached in 50 to 70 years rather than centuries. Systems like Wolf 1061, Gliese 667c, and Proxima Centauri. These planets may require more terraforming work, but they offer the possibility of establishing human colonies much sooner. And if those planets can't support life, the factory worker asked. Then you adapt. Humanity has always been at its best when facing impossible challenges. Foster's voice carried the conviction of someone who had spent her career in deep space. The colony ships carry manufacturing equipment, terraforming technology, and some of the best minds in human space. You won't just survive, you'll build new worlds. The crowd was not entirely convinced, but Foster could see the shift from despair to cautious hope in some faces. These people had been told they were being left behind, but they were really being sent ahead, pioneers who would establish humanity's first foothold among the stars. Captain, came a voice from her communicator, priority message from Admiral Hayes. Foster stepped aside, activating her private channel. Hayes's voice came through clearly despite the interference from the solar radiation. "Captain, change of plans. The FTL modifications have created new possibilities. Some of your extended-range ships are being upgraded to serve as advanced scouts for the Ark fleet." "Explain, sir." "Dr. Nakamura's team has developed a way to use the solar explosion to boost FTL speed. But it's untested and dangerous. We need ships to go ahead, establish safe routes, and confirm that our destination systems are habitable. Your colony ships are perfect for the mission." Foster felt a chill. Scout missions meant even greater risks, but also greater purpose. "What kind of timeline are we looking at?" "The scout ships launch in 72 hours, well before the main evacuation. You'll reach your destination systems decades before the Ark ships. If the planets are habitable, you begin terraforming. If not, you find alternatives and guide the main fleet to safety." It was a tremendous responsibility, but Foster found herself nodding. "Understood, Admiral. I'll inform my passengers of the mission change." "Captain," Hayes continued, "I need you to understand what you're volunteering for. These scout missions are one-way trips. Even if everything goes perfectly, you'll never see Earth again, never reunite with family members on other ships. You'll be the first humans to die under alien suns." "Or the first to build new homes under them," Foster replied. "I'll take those odds." When she returned to address the crowd, Foster found them waiting with the patience of people who had already accepted their fate. But now she had something different to offer them. "Ladies and gentlemen, I've just received new orders. Your ships are no longer extended-range colony ships. You're now part of the advanced scout fleet." She activated the holographic display again, this time showing star maps and planetary data. "In 72 hours, you'll be the first humans to leave the solar system. You'll be the first to reach the new worlds, the first to establish human colonies among the stars." The silence that followed was absolute. Then, slowly, the factory worker raised her hand again. "Captain, does this mean we'll be the ones who decide if these new worlds are safe for our children?" "Yes," Foster said simply. "The future of humanity will depend on what you accomplish in the next few decades." The murmur that ran through the crowd was different now, not despair, but determination. These people had been selected not because they were expendable, but because they were pioneers. They would carry humanity's future in their hands. "When do we leave?" asked the man who had spoken earlier. 72 hours. I suggest you use that time to prepare for the greatest adventure in human history." As the crowd began to disperse, many of them already making plans and forming working groups, Foster remained in the cargo bay, looking out through the viewports at the distant glow of the dying sun. In 3 days, she would leave behind everything humanity had ever known, carrying 5,000 souls toward an uncertain future among the stars. But for the first time since the evacuation began, she felt not fear, but excitement. They were not refugees fleeing destruction, they were explorers seeking new worlds. And that made all the difference. Chapter 9, The Sins of the Fathers. Dr. Sarachin floated in the observation dome of Helios Station Prime, watching her life's work die along with the star that had powered it. The solar collection arrays that she had helped design now drifted as molten debris, their quantum cores dark and their purpose forever ended. In her hands, she held a data pad containing the final analysis of what they had done to the sun, humanity's greatest achievement and its greatest sin combined into one terrible legacy. "The quantum resonance cascade is accelerating," reported Dr. Patel from the monitoring station below. "Core temperature fluctuations now exceed safe parameters by a factor of 12. Chen nodded, though she felt no satisfaction in being proven right. 3 centuries ago, when the first solar collection stations had been proposed, she had been a young researcher full of enthusiasm for humanity's boldness in harnessing stellar energy. She had dismissed the warnings of a few conservative scientists who worried about long-term effects on stellar stability. The mathematics had seemed so clear, the safety margins so vast. "Dr. Chen," came a voice from the communications array, "incoming transmission from the Terran Council. They're requesting your final report on the solar timeline." She closed her eyes, knowing that her next words would determine the fate of millions of people. The latest calculations showed that the sun's collapse would occur sooner than anyone had predicted, perhaps within 25 days rather than the 35 they had been planning for. It would give the evacuation fleets less time to reach safe distance, meaning that some ships might not escape the sterilization radius. "Tell them I'll have the report ready in 1 hour," she said. "And Dr. Patel, begin the evacuation of all remaining personnel from the inner solar monitoring stations. We're going to lose sensor data, but I won't sacrifice more lives for measurements." As her assistant coordinated the final evacuations, Chen began composing what would likely be her last scientific report. The irony was bitter. She was documenting the destruction of the very star system that had given birth to science itself. Earth's libraries contained 3 millennia of human knowledge, but all of it would soon be reduced to ash and plasma. The door to the observation dome opened, and Admiral Hayes floated in, his expression grim. "Dr. Chen, I need to ask you something that you're not going to like." She turned from her contemplation of the dying star. "Admiral, the quantum physicists working on the FTL modifications need more detailed data on the explosion pattern. Specifically, they need to know the exact quantum signature of the stellar collapse. The only way to get that data is to keep monitoring stations active right up until the moment of detonation." Chen felt a chill that had nothing to do with the station's environmental systems. "You're asking me to sacrifice people for data. I'm asking you to save the human race. Without that quantum data, Dr. Nakamura's FTL boost won't work. The Arc ships will be trapped in normal space when the explosion hits." The weight of the choice settled on Chen's shoulders like a physical burden. She could evacuate the monitoring stations and save the lives of the few hundred scientists still collecting data. But without their final measurements, the millions of people aboard the Arc ships would die. It was a calculation that reduced human lives to numbers, something that violated every ethical principle she had ever held. "How many people?" she asked quietly. 347 researchers across 12 monitoring stations. "They've all volunteered, Dr. Chen. They know what they're signing up for." Volunteers. As if that made the moral calculus any easier. These were her colleagues, scientists who had dedicated their lives to understanding the universe. Now they were offering to die for that understanding. What about remote monitoring? Automated systems? The quantum interference from the solar instability makes remote operation impossible. We need human observers, making real-time adjustments to the sensors. Hayes paused, his voice softening. "Dr. Chen, these people chose to stay. They know the importance of their work." She turned back to the viewport, watching solar flares arc across the sun's surface like the death throes of a god. Each flare carried more energy than humanity had used in its entire history, and soon all of that energy would be unleashed in a single, catastrophic explosion. "There's something else," she said quietly. "Something I haven't told the Council." "What is it?" "The explosion won't be instantaneous. The stellar collapse will trigger a cascade effect that takes approximately 6 hours to propagate through the sun's entire mass. The monitoring stations will have 6 hours of data collection during the collapse itself." Admiral Hayes was silent for a long moment. 6 hours of watching the sun die. 6 hours of the most detailed stellar collapse measurements in human history. Data that could revolutionize our understanding of stellar physics, quantum mechanics, and faster-than-light travel. Chen's voice caught slightly. "But 6 hours that my colleagues won't survive. Dr. Chen, I can't order you to make this choice. But I can tell you that without this data, everything we're trying to accomplish fails. The Arc ships, the colony fleets, the entire evacuation, it all depends on understanding exactly how our star dies." She closed her eyes, thinking of the factory worker's daughter who would grow up aboard Arc 7, of the children who would never see Earth but might someday walk under alien suns. The mathematics were cruel but clear. 347 lives weighed against 7 billion. "I'll coordinate the final monitoring phase," she said finally. "But I'm staying with them. If they're going to die for science, they won't die alone. Dr. Chen." "It's not negotiable, Admiral. This is my project, my responsibility. I should have seen the risks centuries ago, should have pushed for more conservative approaches. The least I can do is see it through to the end. Hayes nodded slowly, understanding the weight of command and the burden of impossible choices. Very well. Your sacrifice will be remembered. No, Chen said, turning back to watch the sun's fury. Our sacrifice will be useful. That's all any scientist can ask for. As Admiral Hayes departed to coordinate the final evacuation phases, Chen began the process of organizing humanity's most important scientific observation. In 25 days, she and her colleagues would watch the sun die, collecting data that would either save the human race or become the final entry in the scientific record of a dead civilization. Either way, they would face the end with their eyes open and their instruments recording. It was, she thought, a fitting end for the species that had learned to split atoms and bend space-time. They would go out seeking knowledge, even if that knowledge came at the ultimate price. Chapter 10, The Forge of Stars. Chief Engineer Dmitry Kozlov stood in the main construction bay of Titan Station, surrounded by the organized chaos of humanity's greatest engineering project. Around him, thousands of workers, human, android, and AI-assisted, labored to complete the final Orc ship before the rapidly approaching deadline. The massive vessel stretched before him like a metallic mountain, its hull gleaming with the lights of welders and construction crews working around the clock. Status report, he called out, his voice amplified by the suit's communication system as he floated through the zero-gravity workspace. Hull integrity at 97%, reported Sandra Kim, his chief construction supervisor. The residential modules from New Tokyo Station have been successfully integrated, and the agricultural sections are coming online ahead of schedule. Kozlov nodded, checking his neural interface for updates from the other construction sites. Arc 1 at Mars was complete and undergoing final testing. Arc 2 at Europa had encountered problems with its power systems but was still on schedule. Arcs 3 and 4 were nearing completion, while Arcs 5 and 6 faced various technical challenges that pushed their completion times to the absolute deadline. But it was Arc 7, the ship he was personally overseeing, that would carry the largest population, nearly 8 million souls packed into a vessel that was more city than spacecraft. Every system had to work perfectly, every component had to integrate flawlessly, because there would be no opportunity for major repairs during the centuries-long journey to their new home. Chief, came a voice from the communications station, Dr. Nakamura is requesting immediate consultation on the FTL drive integration. There are complications with the quantum field generators. Kozlov sighed, pushing off from a nearby bulkhead to float toward the ship's engineering section. The faster-than-light drives were the most complex systems ever built by humanity, and integrating them with the massive Arc ships had proved to be a nightmare of technical challenges. The quantum field generators alone required more power than some planets consumed, and they had to operate in perfect synchronization across all 7 ships. In the FTL chamber, he found Dr. Nakamura and his team hunched over holographic displays showing quantum field patterns that looked more like abstract art than engineering schematics. The Japanese physicist looked exhausted, his usually immaculate appearance disheveled from days of continuous work. Dmitry, we have a problem, Nakamura said without preamble. The quantum resonance patterns are interfering with the ship's structural integrity. Every time we test the FTL systems, we get microfractures in the hull. Kozlov examined the data, his engineering experience allowing him to quickly grasp the implications. The FTL drives created distortions in space-time that put enormous stress on the ship's structure. The Arc ships were designed to withstand the rigors of interstellar travel, but they had never been tested with the modified quantum drives that would be necessary for their escape from the solar system. What kind of structural reinforcement are we talking about? He asked. At least 20% increase in hull thickness, plus quantum stabilization fields throughout the entire structural framework, replied Dr. Elena Vasquez, Nakamura's chief engineer. It would add approximately 3 weeks to the construction timeline. 3 weeks they didn't have. The solar timeline was fixed, and delays in completion meant delays in evacuation. Kozlov's mind raced through alternatives, considering compromises that would keep them on schedule while maintaining structural integrity. What if we don't reinforce the entire hull, he suggested. What if we create quantum isolation chambers for the FTL drives, separated from the main structure by dampening fields? Nakamura's eyes lit up as he considered the possibility. It could work. We would need to redesign the power distribution systems and add redundant life support to the isolated sections, but it's feasible within our timeline, Vasquez finished. The risk is that if the isolation fails during FTL transit, the quantum effects could tear the ship apart. Everything we're doing carries that risk, Kozlov replied grimly. The question is whether we're willing to accept manageable risks to avoid certain death. Over the next 6 hours, the 3 engineers redesigned major portions of the Ark ship's internal structure, creating isolated quantum chambers that would protect the ship's population from the dangerous effects of the modified FTL drives. It was a solution born of desperation and implemented with the kind of creative engineering that had carried humanity to the stars in the first place. Chief Kozlov, came a call from the construction bay, incoming priority transport from Earth. Admiral Hayes requesting immediate meeting. Kozlov found the Admiral waiting in the station's conference room, his expression even more serious than usual. With him was a woman Kozlov didn't recognize, elderly, with the kind of cybernetic implants that suggested a lifetime spent in deep space. Dmitri, this is Captain Margaret Santos, former commander of the Deep Space Exploration Program, Hayes said. She has information that could change our entire evacuation strategy. Captain Santos activated a holographic display showing star charts of the local galactic region. Chief Kozlov, how much do you know about the Kepler 442 system? It's our primary destination. Single star system, 412 light-years away, with at least one potentially habitable planet. Kozlov frowned. Why? Because it's not uninhabited. The silence that followed was absolute. Santos manipulated the display, showing detailed telescope images of the Kepler 442 system taken by deep space probes over the past century. These are electromagnetic signatures from the fourth planet, what we've been calling Kepler 442b. They show patterns consistent with industrial civilization. Radio transmissions, power generation, possibly even space travel within the system itself. Kozlov felt the blood drain from his face. Humanity was fleeing to a star system that was already occupied by an alien civilization. Are you certain? As certain as we can be without direct contact. The signals have been analyzed by our best xenobiologists and physicists. There's definitely intelligent life in our destination system. Admiral Hayes leaned forward. The question is, what do we do with this information? We can't change course, there isn't time to find another destination and reprogram all the navigation systems. And we can't delay the evacuation. So we're launching 7 ships carrying 40 million people toward a potentially hostile alien civilization, Kozlov said slowly. Without their knowledge or permission. It gets worse, Santos continued. The electromagnetic signatures suggest a technology level roughly equivalent to our own, possibly more advanced. If they view our arrival as an invasion. She didn't need to finish the sentence. Humanity could escape the dying sun only to face annihilation at the hands of an alien species protecting their homeworld. What about the colony ships? Kozlov asked. Could we redirect some of them to alternative destinations? Already in progress, Hayes replied. Captain Foster's scout fleet is being sent to multiple systems to establish fallback options. But the bulk of our population will still be headed toward Kepler 442. Kozlov turned back to the viewport, where Arc 7 gleamed in the light of construction crews putting the finishing touches on humanity's greatest creation. Millions of people would board that ship, trusting that it would carry them to safety. Now they faced the possibility that their new home might become their final battleground. Then we'd better make sure these ships are ready for anything, he said finally. If we're going to be refugees, we'll be well-armed refugees. My thoughts exactly, Admiral Hayes replied. Which brings me to why I'm really here. I need you to add weapons systems to the Ark ships. Chapter 11, The Weaponers. Captain Marcus Webb stood in the armory of the battleship Indomitable, surrounded by the most advanced weapons technology humanity had ever created. Plasma cannons, quantum torpedoes, and gravitational disruptors lined the walls in orderly rows, each one capable of destroying entire fleets. But now these weapons would serve a different purpose, protecting civilian evacuation ships from threats both known and unknown. Captain, reported Lieutenant Commander Sarah Jones, his weapons officer. The retrofit specifications from Admiral Hayes are ambitious. He wants us to arm civilian vessels with military-grade weapons systems. Webb examined the technical specifications on his tablet, his expression growing more troubled with each page. The Admiral was requesting that weapons be installed on cargo ships, passenger transports, and even some of the massive Orc ships themselves. It was a level of militarization that had never been attempted with civilian vessels. "What's the timeline for these modifications?" he asked. 18 days for the priority vessels, 25 days for the full fleet. But sir, most of these ships weren't designed to handle military power systems. We'll need to completely redesign their electrical grids and structural support systems. It was a massive undertaking, but Webb understood the reasoning behind it. Intelligence reports suggested that their destination system was inhabited by an alien civilization of unknown capabilities. If humanity arrived as refugees and was met with hostility, they would need every advantage they could get. "What about the Orc ships specifically?" Webb asked. "Can they be armed without compromising their primary mission?" Jones pulled up detailed schematics of the massive vessels. Arc 7 is the most promising candidate. Its size allows for significant weapons integration without affecting life support or FTL systems. We could install 12 heavy plasma batteries, quantum torpedo launchers, and defensive screen generators. Essentially turning a colony ship into a battleship, Webb mused. The thought was both exciting and terrifying. The Orc ships were meant to preserve human civilization, not project military power. But if they encountered hostile aliens, civilization would need protection. "Captain Webb," came a voice from the ship's communications system, priority transmission from Admiral Hayes. "He's requesting an immediate status update on the armament project." The hologram of Admiral Hayes materialized in the center of the armory, his expression showing the strain of coordinating the evacuation of an entire species. Behind him, Webb could see the bridge of the Defiant, bustling with activity as staff officers managed the largest military operation in human history. "Captain, I need to know if we can arm the evacuation fleet in time. The intelligence about our destination has changed everything." "Admiral, we can arm the priority vessels within the timeline, but there are risks. Most civilian ships weren't designed for military power systems. We could see structural failures, power grid overloads, or worse. What about actual combat capability? If we encounter hostile aliens, can these ships fight?" Webb considered the question carefully. The armed cargo ships and transports would be useful for defensive actions, but they wouldn't be effective in ship-to-ship combat. The Orc ships, however. He paused, manipulating the holographic display to show weapon placement diagrams. The Orc ships could be formidable. Their size allows for heavy weapons installations, and their power systems could support sustained combat operations. Even while maintaining life support for millions of people, the latest fusion reactors are powerful enough to handle both military and civilian loads simultaneously. The real limitation would be trained personnel to operate the weapons systems. Admiral Hayes nodded thoughtfully. "I'm authorizing the transfer of military personnel to the Orc ships. Each one will carry a full naval combat crew in addition to its civilian population." It was an unprecedented decision. The Orc ships would become hybrid vessels, part colony ship, part warship, capable of either establishing peaceful colonies or defending humanity's right to exist among the stars. "Admiral," Webb continued, "there's another consideration. If we arrive at the destination system armed for war, the aliens may interpret that as hostile intent. We could trigger the very conflict we're trying to prevent. That's a risk we'll have to take. Captain, I'd rather arrive prepared for war and find peace than arrive prepared for peace and find war." Over the next few hours, Webb coordinated with weapons specialists across the solar system, organizing the largest rearmament project in human history. Ships that had been designed to carry cargo or passengers were being transformed into instruments of war. The irony was not lost on him. Humanity was fleeing the destruction they had caused to their own star, only to prepare for potential war with aliens whose only crime was living on a planet humanity needed. Captain, Lieutenant Commander Jones reported, "We're receiving requests from some civilian ship captains. They want to know if they can opt out of the weapons installations." Webb considered the question. The armament project was voluntary for civilian vessels, but the pressure to participate was enormous. Ships that refused military upgrades might find themselves excluded from the most protected evacuation convoys. "Tell them they have a choice," Webb said finally. "But make sure they understand the implications. If we encounter hostile aliens, unarmed ships will be the first targets. And if we encounter peaceful aliens who are threatened by our weapons." Webb looked around the armory at the instruments of destruction that might become humanity's salvation. "Then we'll have to hope that our capacity for war makes our desire for peace more credible." It was a grim philosophy, but it reflected the reality of their situation. Humanity was about to become refugees in someone else's star system, carrying weapons that could destroy worlds and populations that needed new homes. The balance between survival and aggression would determine not just humanity's fate, but possibly the fate of an entire alien civilization. "Lieutenant Commander, begin the weapons installations immediately. And make sure every armed ship receives training on rules of engagement. If we're going to carry guns, we'd better know when not to use them." As the armament project began in earnest, Webb found himself wondering what kind of species humanity would become in their new home. Would they be peaceful colonists grateful for sanctuary, or would they be conquerors who took what they needed by force? The weapons they were installing would give them the capability for either path. He hoped they would choose wisely.